Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tanya Talks. I'm your host, Tanya Ricketts, and we're trying this again. Tonight, we are having a technical glitch, so we apologize for being late. We will add it on in the end. And tonight, joining me is, we're making history tonight with Alvin Pilabello. We have this doubling up, and we're trying to figure out why this is doubling up here. So you guys got to bear with us for a second, just as we're working through. And I think that we've solved that issue right there. So, Alvin, welcome this evening. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you for having me, Tanya. And let's breathe. Just notice those emotions.
It's been a tense 10 minutes. I'm like, I've never had this happen before. What's going on?
Facebook is testing us right now.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's the topic today. Eh?
Okay. Right. Yes, that should be the topic. But instead, you're here for a bigger cause, and that cause is to share with us, men and emotions can mix. And I just want to give our audience just a little bit of background about you and who you are, what you do, and just really just share who you are. I know that you've got a very technical background you have 10 years plus experience in the engineering field. So a very male-based environment. But yet you tend to have a very empathetic spirit about you, and you are a leadership coach and trainer. And what you do is you help leaders communicate and lead their teams, creating cultures that are empathetic and able to produce. So I think that's phenomenal. You've got a very impressive resume. Alvin, for everybody listening in, Alvin is in BC, and he's taking some time to write a book. And I think that that's very courageous of you to just put your life away and just, put aside everything else and leave to escape, and not even escape, but to take the time to bring some relevant information that I think that we can all use and heal from. So thank you.
I'm happy to be here. Yeah, let's dive in.
Yes, let's dive in. So share a little bit to us, you came up with this, we spoke, and you came up with the title, Men and Emotions Can Mix. Like, what does that mean to you? Where did it come from? Share a little bit about your story and how that all started.
Yeah, for me, it took me a long time to be able to articulate my own emotions. So how can I describe my experience in words? Because before words, it was just, I feel this, but I don't know how to describe it, and I can't communicate it to someone else as to what I'm feeling. So a lot of my journey really started when I started seeing a counselor and mental health professionals who would ask me really insightful questions and help me through that baby step stages of understanding what it was I was experiencing, why I was experiencing it, what was triggering those, and in terms of the external circumstances in my life. There's often this stereotype that men are not great emotions communicators. And for the most part, I see that to be true, but not true for everyone. Since then, I've met lots of men that are very articulate, they're very self-aware. And I think there's a lot of work that can be done, including on myself, to continue to be more emotionally intelligent and to be more in touch with my emotions so that I can choose more intentionally in my life, even when things are stressful, such as, like you're trying to get on Facebook Live and things are not working out. And it's like, how do I manage myself here without freaking out or without swearing or whatever it is that your tendencies might want to do when you're absolutely stressed.
Right. You talked about emotional intelligence just a second ago. You mentioned emotional intelligence. What does that mean, in relation, like women spend an awful lot of time, people in general do, but tonight we're talking about men and emotions. And what does that mean for a man to be emotionally intelligent?
Sure, I'll start with what I mean by emotional intelligence first, which is emotions for me are a source of, for lack of a better word, data. It sounds clinical, but emotions are a huge source of information, because usually emotions come up as a result of something that's happening around me, to me, and within me. So I'm trying to understand what it is that I'm feeling. And then based on that information, what am I going to choose to do? So that's the intelligence part, which is I'm processing this and I'm making sense of this information. And based on that information, I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to think certain thoughts and I'm going to make a choice. So what I mean by higher emotional intelligence is that we act intelligently and creatively. So we, even if it is hard, we try not to act out of fear or out of scarcity.
Okay, so I think of that, and I think I know so many men in my life that would be like, well, I can think it, but I'm not going to, how do we connect to that emotionally, where they can think it, but how do they work to connect that with what they're feeling and working through their heart?
Yeah. Well, one of the first steps is even realizing it's happening.
Mm,
Right? Is there's often a reaction that we may want to take in the moment as a way to protect ourselves, as a way to fix it, or as a way to stop the suffering or pain, the discomfort even. And so part of the first step is just being able to not act right away, not react, and just notice, what is it I'm feeling right now? I'm feeling angry. Just to even be able to label that emotion is already a good start, because
mhm.
then I can see myself from outside myself and see, okay, I can feel that. And then the stage after that is, well, what are my choices right now?
Right. And do
Because
you find
sometimes,
that you said that that's powerful? And I like the way you said that, is that it's allowing yourself to feel it in that moment. Because I find that, and me being a coach myself, and I find that men, when they get to that moment where they can feel something, it's like all of a sudden they dismiss it and they numb out. So I think it's very powerful that you're suggesting that, or not suggesting, but giving yourself that opportunity to feel in the moment, in the present moment. I feel angry. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling that. What has that allowed you to do? How's that helped you in that moment really connect with what you're feeling?
I can really relate to that numbing out piece, because it's like, I mean, we're all computing machines in a way, like a lot of input and then a lot of output. But when there's an information overload, an emotional information overload, the system can shut down
Mm,
because I don't know how to make sense of it. I don't know what my options are. And so I will want to stop that information, or at least try to fix it or stop the discomfort. So a big part of it is just realizing first, I am experiencing this, and eventually be able to improve our stamina, if you will, and capacity for emotional discomfort. Because from that point on, I can look at it a little bit more slowly and intentionally, so that I can make a better choice than simply shutting down and stonewalling someone.
right, right. And I think in this moment, I have to have a true, transparent confession with the way that you're articulating it. You've artfully in this moment taken the way, I find men are very technical in the way they speak. You've been able to speak the technical terms, but say it in a way that allows the emotion to be in it. And I just recognize that just now. So, and I always say Tanya Talks is, real life, real people, real events in the real moment, candid. So thank you for that. And I hope, audience, you picked up on that, where you're like, information overload, basically not knowing how to process it. And instead of numbing out, it's, really, kind of coming outside of yourself and understanding it versus numbing out and dismissing it is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out as well.
Well, because it's very technical, right? Like with the data and the this, and it's like, we want data. Like, I just had a show the other day and it was about numbers, and women are intimidated by numbers. And all of a sudden we hear data and we're like, data? Like, what do you mean data? But
Yeah.
it's like, yes, that men and emotions can mix. We can take our data and we can be empathetic, as you say, and emotional beings with it. Um, talk to me a little bit about your own. You had mentioned earlier on that I think it's very courageous of you that you actually sought help with what you were going through. what made you take that leap of faith and just say, okay, I need help? It's very courageous. What gave you the courage to do so?
I think I was going very much through that information overload. I was going through a relationship where I felt intense jealousy. I could, I really judged myself harshly for, oh, I don't think I'm enough for this person, and they might leave me, and there's a fear of loss. And at the same time, there was also um, so much anxiety that I couldn't sleep. I wasn't eating well. I couldn't focus on work. I actually worked even more hours because I felt guilty about my unproductive number of hours. I would actually walk into the office. I don't know if they saw this in the log. I walk into the office at like 5 a.m. because I felt so guilty. And so there was this aspect of, I can't do this. And I tried different things. Like there was one night I tried to numb it with alcohol. And then the next morning it's like, I can't do that. And I'm lucky I don't have that predisposition to get addicted to alcohol, right? But there was lots of different ways where, okay, this isn't working. Given that there is this resource here that is thankfully available to me, and I was in a position to be able to seek that help. I gave it a try. I'd never had someone make space for me in that way.
And what was that like? Or what did that feel like?
Well, psychological safety, I could just trust that person. And I recognized it because I heard that a lot from my friends as well of, hey, you're a good listener. Thanks for listening to me doing that or saying that. And I recognized that in the very first person that I ended up talking to. So yeah.
Okay. And how long would you say, was it a long time before you were able to connect, like to have a deeper level of understanding? Did it take a long time? Was it painful?
Very painful, yeah. I mean, talking to someone doesn't fix anything. Talking to someone helps make sense of things better, especially someone such as a mental health professional who can ask you really insightful questions and make connections along with you.
Okay.
To understand and make sense of, here's another story that you can tell about the situation.
Okay. And what does that look like from the perspective of, when I think about, guys expressing their feelings, how do you think that guys can really navigate through, I talk to guys, a lot, and when I listen to them, they seem to have a challenging time expressing the way they feel. It's like women, we're expressive and creative with the way we use our vocabulary, and guys are very like, how do you look? Great. Okay. But inside they're they have a whole different feeling, but they just really have a hard time expressing that. And A, why is that? And B, how can we start to change that in society?
Yeah. Well, I want to start with saying that men are not all not expressive. So it's like I find I'm
It's a
actually
myth.
too expressive. I think it's a myth. I've met a lot of men that are very good at articulating themselves. Having said that, these are also men that have learned the vocabulary of being able to express the nuances in their emotions. So instead of just saying I'm angry, sad, or frowny face, there's different levels and nuance to what is it that I'm angry about. The other words, but it takes time to be able to differentiate and use language effectively. So even though it's English or whatever language that you use the most, it's being able to pick and know the right words to describe the experience that I'm having. Now, having said that, so when I say I'm feeling prickly, my prickly might be different than someone else's prickly in terms of their experience. So being able to be curious around what my experience is helps as well. So it really does take time and practice and help from your support system. So whether it be a mental health professional or your partner, or a really good friend, regardless of gender. It's being able to articulate your experiences and emotions better, and having that person be able to reflect back to you, hey, this is what I heard, and I'm wondering if that's what you meant.
Right. Right. And I like the way that you use the vocabulary, like it's just finding the right emotional vocabulary, with men being able to learn how to express what they're experiencing in that moment. I find a lot of times, at least, again, in coaching, I found that men, it was helping them develop that vocabulary that I found was a challenge, because they're not used to, they haven't been given the tools to express what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Or even what I found even more interesting, and I don't know if you would be in this realm, but I found that men didn't know how to communicate what they needed. They say women have a hard time communicating what they need, or they give mixed messages. But I found that men just really in general had a harder time saying, this is what I need, because
Yes.
they felt weak and vulnerable.
Oh, I have so many thoughts about that. So um, I'll start off with the work that I do as a leadership coach. A big part of being a leadership coach is really about communication. One of my favorite quotes about communication is somewhere along the lines of, there is the misconception that it has taken place.
Mm.
I think I've communicated something, I've intended to communicate something, but how it lands with somebody else might be completely different.
Mm.
And I might have a different perception. I think I've communicated something to you by telling you, you look great in that dress. And you're looking for more, like you want more words to describe what kind of great. Is it like pizza great, or is it like you look amazing
We're
in
looking for
that
that
hot,
passion, that connection, that
yeah, that
feeling,
emotional expressiveness,
yes,
right?
yes.
And so in that person's mind, it's like, I've already told you, you were great. I don't know what you want, what else you want me to say. And so there needs to be a communication too of hey, you just said great, so I'm wondering what else you mean by that, and
But men
being
seem to
able
put up
to.
barriers when that happens.
They can.
Well, didn't you
And
just hear what I said? I said you're great. And in exactly what you just said
yes,
is what we come back with. We're like, well, what do you mean great? Like, is it, yeah, or is it pizza great? Or like, what kind of great is it? Is it muscle car great? Like, what is it?
which level am I at here?
Right.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's more of a, it's also a common human, I want to say error of, but I've communicated it. I don't know why I need to communicate even more. Like, you should know what I mean. But I guess part of the encouragement that I have for people, and specifically men in general, is not trying to be right.
Mm.
Not trying to be right, that I've communicated, I don't know why you need it anymore, but trying to be in relationship, which is, oh, I just heard that you want more, so let me try again.
I
I
like
think
that.
so, being able to take a step back and actually listen to what the other person is asking for, which may not be a direct ask. When you say, what do you mean by great, what you're really asking is, hey, can you give me more expression as to what you really mean? So there's a direct and indirect communication
I
aspect to
love
it.
it. I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, it takes, that's work. That actually will take work.
Yeah, communication is hard work.
It is. It really is. Because because what came to me as you're saying this, and as you're expressing back and mirroring back, like, this is what I'm hearing, like, you need more. And I always wondered to myself, do men have a challenging time showing up when you talked about the relationship aspect of it? Do men have a hard time showing up in the relationship because they haven't been taught how to emotionally show up for themselves?
There's an aspect here of vulnerability for sure. One thing I'll say about vulnerability is it takes practice to stay vulnerable.
Mm. I like that.
So if, just all of my work in the past 10 years, I've learned to exercise my muscle of vulnerability.
Mm.
And so I can stay in discomfort longer than most other people, I would say. And if that person, regardless of gender, has not been privy or had the privilege or experience of a childhood or teenagehood or adulthood of being given space, psychologically safe space to express themselves, what they really think, and not to be made wrong, um, and not to and for your feelings to be just accepted as it is without needing to be fixed, then that person will be more likely to be vulnerable going forward. But without that environment of trust in the past, that's where that person will start from. Is I've never felt that, so I don't know why you would want me to be vulnerable. That's too scary. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have, if I talk about it in terms of data points, I don't have enough data points in my past, in my history of information to tell me that this is safe right now, that I'll be okay. So
Right.
if I let myself go, it might mean, because of the past history data points, is that if men show vulnerability, they're going to be seen as weak, by all people, regardless of gender, because there is this hyper masculinization of this is what a man should look like. A successful man is this, and you see it in the ads, you see it
Well, they're
in
almost like
movies.
hard and emotionless and just, the thinkers and, just focused and driven.
Yeah,
Like it's like they're not men are not painted as pictures of being soft. And not to say that all men, but just in general, you are correct with how society reflects that picture of this, successful man. It's just very like, that hard face, that hard expression, not hard face, but that hard expression.
yeah,
And, women married to successful men usually paint that picture of more military type of a husband, versus you very rarely hear that picture painted of, as you talk about, the softer, emotional, empathetic. And you're suggesting, and I like the suggestion, is that can exist and still achieve productivity at a high rate. And I'd love to see it start to emerge and see if we can test the data to see if there is data that will prove that you could probably elevate your level of success in business as a result of adding that component into it.
yeah. One of the first steps is noticing what our own internal unconscious bias is. Even like, who are you attracted to? Who do you
Right.
tend to be attracted to? Is it the men in the really fancy suits, or someone in a football uniform as a quarterback, or is it the man in uniform, military uniform? Because these are some of the most stereotypical. This is a man,
Right.
right? And you've got lots of men that are artists, that are soft and expressive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always careful to paint all men as the same. It's just
Right.
that the stereotype is that the most stereotypical men are also the most likely to be invulnerable from an outsider perspective.
Right. Right. Take it back a minute bit. Let's. I'm going to go back a little bit. You touched upon, the environment that individuals come out of, and how it comes down to how men are nurtured. Were you given that space to explore emotionally for yourself, or is it something that you had to develop on your own, in being an awakened state?
I'll start with, I learned to be a good listener, because
Okay.
I listened to my mom a lot. She'd express to me some of the things that she was going through, and being a stay-at-home mom in the Middle East is not easy, especially as she was a strong, independent engineer in the Philippines, leading other men, and to come
Mm,
to a very patriarchal society, where we were living in the Middle East, was a bit of a shock.
mm,
And at the same time, there's family's a priority.
mhm.
So my dad was working there in the Middle East, so I learned the range of emotions that a person can have simply by being a receiver of those emotions. Having said that, I did not express my own feelings. So that's where my development gap was in terms of my emotional vocabulary, if you will. So I learned that later on in my I would say early adulthood.
Okay. So what did that look like when you talked about the vocabulary? Was it what did that look like for you in how you interacted with your mom? And you were a good listener, you're hearing these stories, you're now unconsciously starting to develop this language. What did that look like for you? Like, was it, was it an unfair language? Was it like, what did it look like? How was it expressed?
Ooh, I mean, it ranged, it's just the range of any human experience. You range from frustrated to angry to happy to joyful. So, I mean, I got it all in a different language. It was usually in my native language of Tagalog, Filipino language. So even in that there was a translation barrier of like, well, what does that look like in English? I don't know what that translates to in English, literally.
And you speak such perfect good English.
Thank you. Yeah, it all comes down to practice and being allowed to express my own feelings.
And so for, when I think about that, like you were in a position to be a good listener, but you heard your mom express emotions. You saw at varying degrees from going from this powerful, figure to having to, I call dim your light, basically, like go in a box and conform and not produce to the best of your potential. Because of that environment that now suppresses you, the suppressive sort of environment. So now we fast forward it. You understand that you're a good listener. You understand that you're challenged in your life now. You're going through a breakup. You've gone through. You're now learning new vocabulary coupled with what you went through. How do you now translate that into leadership?
Good question.
And it may not be, it may be a thing that we're going to explore live on TV, but how?
Yeah. No, it's a very relevant question. And when I think about leadership, I'm going to talk about it in terms of self-leadership.
Okay.
So what are the choices that I'm going to make that will have a positive impact on myself and the people around me, so that it's productive, if you will. So we have a meaningful relationship that minimizes suffering and frustration, right? The hardest part is turning that awareness into an actual action.
Well, okay, let's explore that for a little bit. Yeah, I like that, turning. Okay, what does that look like?
Sure. So say I'm dating someone and they catch the eye of another person in the room, right? And I see that they have a little bit of chemistry, and jealousy arises because part of my thought process is, oh, I'll be attracted to that person, and that means I'm less of a man if they end up with them. It was just not always conscious in the moment that that's what's happening in my brain. All I'm feeling is heat. I'm feeling anxious in that moment. I don't even understand why. I just notice these different signals, information that I'm absorbing. Now, the hard part, what I meant by awareness, now that I'm aware, oh, I'm jealous here. Interesting. Will I choose to do the noble thing and be the bigger person, or will I lash out on my partner? And when I am in the thick of it, I have not always made that choice, the healthier choice. So
we're human, right?
We are human, and that's where the rubber hits the road, right? that's where emotional intelligence really does come into play, is making that choice that is healthier and productive than even in the heat of the moment, especially when it's hitting against your deepest childhood wound.
Mm.
So there's never any shame for me when I hear people and say, I knew the right thing to do, I could not do it. Because
Well,
it
I
is
always
hard.
say that we are creators of our own reality. So even in this moment, as we're speaking, we created this reality. Even with our technical glitch, I created that reality for
Sure.
whatever reason that I created. And there's a level of responsibility that when we're thinking along those lines, like when we're housing that energy, we have to bring that energy into our life somehow, some way. And I think it crosses over to all genders. It doesn't matter male or female. I just feel that when we use that example, I'm only going to touch on the example that you used. When there's some chemistry there, and then jealousy sets in. Well, you're housing that energy, so all of a sudden, because you're housing that energy, it has to show up. So you're constantly proving to yourself over and over again that you're right. And then I always talk about the chemical aspect of the addiction of the emotion. So it's like you're constantly wanting that feeling so that the brain's releasing that chemical within the body to say, oh, I've got my fix. I remember when I started to wake up to that, it started to really change my life because I became aware that I wasn't looking for that fix anymore. So how can I recreate a new fix to create a new reality? And I feel that it is an area that, again, only in my profession, that I found that women studied a lot more of. And when you talk about that, I think it would help if men understood that they also are addicted to a chemical, that in that moment of awareness, and how can we change that?
Yeah, my perspective on this is uh, it doesn't always have to come down to the hard choice in the moment.
Mm.
So for me, one of the things I realized later on was, oh, I always need validation. I need an external validation. So here, in this case, it's the person that I'm dating.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're giving someone else validation, not me validation, even in that very brief moment, it triggers this "I'm not enough" part of
Right.
me.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So men
so
feel that too?
what? Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a different environment that we grow in, that we're always steeped in. So if stereotypically men are expected to be macho and invulnerable to any kind of emotional triggering event, then that is the ideal. And so if I have to hold up to that ideal, then anything else means that I'm not enough.
Mm.
So in that place, it's, sometimes the emotional intelligent choice doesn't have to be the answer. Loving myself more and validating myself means that I don't have to put myself into that hard choice as
Mm-hmm.
often, because I already believe, oh, but no matter what happens here, even if my partner goes away with this person, worst case scenario, I'll be okay,
Mm-hmm.
because I know the right person for me will actually say, hey, I noticed that, and I'm sorry if that triggered you.
Or maybe they won't do it at all. Maybe they
Or
won't
yeah,
exist.
sure. At the end of the day, it's noticing that, oh, that's the lever for me. That's the
Okay.
thing that's missing. It isn't the fact that I need perfect circumstances so that I never get triggered. It's that even let me fix the thing that I need the most, but not expect someone else to fix it for me.
Got it. Oh, I like that. So taking personal responsibility for you and how you're choosing to respond to the situation.
Yeah, that word responsibility is hard, because especially when we are in the thick of really hard emotions, there is often this human tendency to want to take it out on, and work it out on someone else.
Mm-hmm.
thereby relieving ourselves of the responsibility and expecting someone else to take responsibility for our own emotions. So it's not to say that the other person don't trigger us. Of course, they do hurtful things. And at the same time, it is a shared responsibility, and I can make choices even if I feel something hard.
I appreciate the fact that you said taking responsibility is hard. We talked about, you know, the muscle and your stamina. I love taking responsibility now. It was hard for me in the beginning. I'll admit it, but I seem to gain my power back internally the more I took responsibility for what was showing up in my life, how I was creating it, how I was triggered by others. And when you talked about being enough, number one, you are correct. We kind of view men as being it just unbothered by it. You hear like women hang on to things for so long. I have girlfriends that are like, this is why I love having guy friends, because they don't hang on to anything. So there is that macho image, like you guys are okay, you're thick skin, nothing penetrates you guys. And it's quite the opposite, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I shared with you, I'm an introvert, so I hang on to things. Like years later, I was just, oh, I said that really awkward thing, and every time I see that person, I still think of that moment.
Right.
So I think it's not, to me, it's still not a gendered thing. All of us hang on to it. It's just a matter of, am I communicating that I feel guilty about that, or not? And if I'm not used to communicating or expressing my feelings, and there is this gender average of most men don't, then we start to conflate that with what men just don't feel affected by these things. So
Right.
it's a system. It's a really complicated system, complex system.
It is.
Of we need to separate what is biological and what is a result of the system that we are all exposed to.
So what is the difference between the two?
Of the biology and
The system.
well, the easiest one to start with is, of course, testosterone. So, there's a reason men are excited by sports. Not all men. Some men are absolutely not. Some men will prefer to read books and be in quiet places and be engaged in that energy. So biologically, there's that difference. In terms of the system, it's how we grow up on average differently. So I find many of my female friends grew up in an environment where they could talk about their feelings with their mother, versus many of the men may not have had that same experience, because they grow up with their guy friends who are all about doing stuff as opposed to expressing stuff. And there's sometimes there's this identity that most of us hold on to, of we try to be fixers. So if I'm listening to you express something to me and I can't do anything about it, why do I need to hear this? I can't fix it. When all you might want from me is actually, the way you fix this is just by listening to me.
Right.
And it's just
I
a
think
simple reframe.
it goes a little deeper, because women and I, we've had this discussion where we're like, you are correct. We don't want you to fix it. We want you to listen. In addition to listening, a lot of women will express, we also require your empathy, your compassion. And, and I think that that's the bigger piece to it, is the empathetic piece and the compassionate piece, because then you'll have guys that show up and said, well, I've listened. And, a woman will say, you were very disengaged. It's just like you sat there very robotic and very systematic, and you listened. And I've spent years, around the sofa with girlfriends, and we're all like, yeah, and yeah, yeah. Right? And it's, how do men become active listeners who are engaged and show empathy and and compassion, and as you talk about the communication piece, that connection piece, and this is what I'm hearing. Communicate that back to show that there's some empathy. How does that happen? And I question, is it not possible because men were A, never given the emotional vocabulary you talked about, and not enough data being present, and C, not being able to show up for themselves, or anybody showing up to show them empathy or compassion, that they're not able to mirror back, going back to the data?
Sure. It's hard to be empathetic with something that you don't experience yourself.
Mm.
And so part of building empathy is to ask questions. And so building empathy, being empathetic, this is true for anyone. If you want to build empathy, is simply asking, what did that feel like? Or what was that like for you? Or I don't understand when you said this. I heard this. What did you mean? Let the person expand on their experience.
So I got to stop there for a second because you're
Sure.
triggering me. Because I'm telling you, any of my girlfriends watching the show tonight, we've sat down and we've had this conversation, okay? Because, you know, we can do that to our husbands, and they'll come back and they'll say, so, help us women out here. And they'll be, they just, men, not all men. So I'm clear on that. But men tend to typically shut out. What did that feel like to you? What do you mean? What did that feel like? Like there seems to be a numbing of it, or they won't ask questions because they don't like confrontation, because they can't process the fact that you're feeling something that they can identify with that feeling.
To
So they
me,
would quicker just listen and not ask questions.
it's that discomfort for me.
Okay.
It's listening and knowing that you don't fully understand. That's already uncomfortable. It's like someone's talking to you in a different language and you're trying to be as empathetic as you can, but you can't understand any of their words and what they mean by it. So staying there, to me, it's staying there and undivided attention, which is a skill in itself. And sometimes it starts with just that and noticing, oh, they're really having a hard time here. And maybe my presence is what's needed. So that's a hard one, because if there needs to be communication too of this is what I need from you, and being clear on how you would like that person to show up for you.
So what if the person isn't able to? Then what happens?
Isn't able to what?
To
Which
show
person are
up.
you talking about?
So, what if, let's talk about a man. What if a man's not capable of going there to show up for in a relationship, in the work environment? Because we're not just talking, I say relationships just aren't with partners. It's the relationships you have with your coworkers. It's the relationships you have with your neighbors. To me, relationships are relationships. So what happens when they're not capable? Like you're in a work environment and it's a new culture now where you express what you need. What happens when that male isn't able to show up?
Yeah,
If you,
I'd like to separate not able to, which
Mhm.
is a skill, from not willing to,
Okay.
which is a desire or care.
Let's tweet
So
that, okay?
sure. So you can't make someone do anything if they don't care.
Mm,
They will not learn a new skill or a different way of showing up for you if they do not care.
okay.
That's a whole other conversation.
All right, is everybody listening? It is a skill. It is a skill. I like that. I do.
And if they are willing and they care, but they are frustrated and they shut down because they're trying and they're not getting it, then we have something to work with.
Okay.
We meet them where they're at. And yes, it takes emotional labor. But if the
He
person actually
obviously has the
cares,
vocabulary, everyone.
um, but if you're willing, you also have to be willing. You may not have the energy necessarily to do that emotional labor anymore. So then it's a relationship. So it's like, am I willing to do this for you if you're willing to do this for me?
Right.
So that we can, so it's a negotiation of sorts. You're creating an alliance together. Listen, I understand I maybe overloaded you with whatever I expressed. What do you need? So continuing to build that environment of trust or clinically psychological safety.
Can you do it on your own, or do you feel that men need help in that area? Do you feel that, because a lot of men also, my words are ego, is men feel that they can do it by themselves. Men are like, I can do it by myself. I don't need anybody to help me with anything.
Sure. What I will say, of course, support professional helps, because if you're trying to help your partner and you're not a professional in communication anyway, then it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to be a lot of misunderstanding. And so there's this aspect of, if you're a guy and you're willing, you really want to get better at this, don't put all the emotional labor on your partner to have to train you on the emotional vocabulary, to help you unpack your feelings all the time. I'm sure they would be happy to, and it's tiring. I mean, the same is true for racial issues. It's like, do your work. Don't make me have to train you on why white privilege is a thing. So there's a doing my own work of what can I learn so that I can work with my partner better and make it sustainable for them as well to work with me on this new skill.
Where would somebody go? Like, okay, so if they weren't hiring a professional, because there are going to be people that want to do the work, but they're not at that stage. Men are not at that. Not all men are at that stage. It's an emerging culture within the younger generations. Certainly, it's becoming more embraced. So I'm going to date myself, but in my era, well, I'm not going to tell you my age. My era, a little bit younger and certainly older than I am, that wants to do the work, but they're still in that mindset that I'm not going to go seek a professional, for instance. Where can they go? We know the internet, but what type of things will they be looking for when they're on the internet that can help them acquire the skills that you're talking about in order to learn the emotional vocabulary and to do the work?
Published works, checking out whether it's based in research. One, actually have a book right here. I'm actually using it as part of to elevate my laptop slightly.
Okay.
Good Guys. Yeah, Good Guys.
Oh,
so
nice.
It's how men can be better allies for women in the workplace.
Oh, nice.
So,
okay.
And it's written by two men.
Okay.
And so there's this aspect of safety in a sense of, yes, maybe you don't want to go all out and go see a therapist or a counselor right away. Start with a book, see what the perspectives are on this topic. Research what is toxic masculinity, but a big part of it is
what is toxic? What is that? Please tell me. I've never heard of that.
Toxic masculinity?
Yeah. I've never heard of that.
Well, what it means to me is acting in a way in order to preserve my idea of what a stereotypical male is, in order to be seen as a man. Or so it shows up in terms of being invulnerable, or expecting your partner to do all the emotional labor around the house, or around expressing feelings. Like, you don't understand me, you don't know exactly what I'm feeling right now. Meanwhile, I'm not expressing anything to you at all. So how would you know? So for me, it's not taking responsibility for my needs, expecting everyone else to provide for my needs for me. It's not a typical definition of toxic masculinity, but for me, it's about the impact on others.
I completely understand it. I am going to research it when we I'm going to research it, because I've never heard of that before, and I like it where it's self-preservation. There's an author that wrote about male versus man, and his narrative is that to be a man, it's about serving, because men seem to be raised more with a self-preservation way about themselves, but it's destructive to themselves. And you talked earlier on in the show of self-love. It's not self-loving, it's destructive. And women were nurturers, so we're taught to serve, but men are taught to check out almost.
Yes, absolutely.
And when men can kind of get to that place, which goes back to the heart of a man and lead from their heart and learn how to lead with the mind. This narrative was lead with the mind of a servant's heart towards all you'll do. Then you show up being a man, which again promotes what you just said in terms of not leaving it to your partner to do all the emotional work and all the emotional labor and to carry all the emotions of
The
the
relationship.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, like it started off with the question, what kind of man do I want to be?
Mm.
And, I'm just not going to be the stereotypical alpha male. And some of my friends are, and that's okay. That's the kind of man that they are. They walk into a room and they command the room. Right. And that's just not me all the time. Like it depends on what I'm an expert at. Alpha is all relative. Like if I'm a leadership coach, yeah, I'll be alpha in a room when we're talking about emotions. I'll be alpha when I talk about salsa dancing. But if we're going to
Yes,
be
you're a
playing a sport,
self-adapter.
yeah, that's right. But if I'm playing a sport, I will definitely not be alpha because I don't have that expertise or confidence.
Right. So you really have a true or you're really starting to connect to the truth of who you are and be okay with it and not feel like it's not enough.
Yeah. So what I hear when I hear the truth of who I am, it's really getting down to the details and knowing myself deeply as to what energizes me the most.
Mm.
So if I'm being alone, reading books, salsa dancing once in a while, having one-on-one conversation versus group conversation, these are all the things that bring out the best in me.
Mm-hmm.
Versus someone else who will play sports, team stuff. They will be the center of attention around the crowd and will sing out loud in a karaoke bar as like they take all the attention. That's who they are at their best, and that's okay. It's just different. It's a part of self-loving for me is accepting who I am at my best.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can accept that, that's the person that I like. That's the
Mm-hmm.
person that people like seeing. Um, then I'm okay with that.
It's amazing. Did you want to? I know that you're in BC. Alvin's from. He's driven. What is it? A 48-hour drive?
It was 4,200 kilometers, I think, to get here. I did it in 4 days. I just got here about 2 hours ago.
Right, and still on the show. So thank you very much.
Happy to be here.
For joining us because I learned a lot this evening. It's been really nice conversation. Men and emotions can mix, understanding, the language, the vocabulary, the data, understanding the history and connecting with emotions and masculine toxicity. Like it's learning all these things. And you're there writing a book, and I think it's phenomenal. Are you allowed to give a teaser as to what the topic of interest will be?
A big part of why I'm here is to actually explore more the details of what I want to write around. In terms of the general theme, I would like to help people explore how they make sense of things.
Mm.
So it's noticing, oh, I grew up with this, so therefore I shortcut to that. That means this when that happens, versus someone else, they see the same piece of situation, exact same data, but they make a completely different conclusion to me. And now how do we connect? So it's in the form of
I love it.
understanding myself first, so that I can choose to be curious and understand where someone else is coming from.
Right. And you said that earlier on, you used the word curious earlier on. And you brought it up just now. It's just being curious more about who you are. And I commend you for being one of the leaders of men that are becoming more curious about who you are, and showing other men that it's fun. Like I always say to people, like, doing this work is a lot of fun, and encouraging. I know you're writing it for the general public, but just as a man, the book that you're reading just really setting the tone that it's okay for men to be curious about themselves, to learn about themselves more deeply.
Yeah, I actually just met up with a friend recently about this. We all have our shadows, and this friend is a guy. So part of getting to know ourselves is it's not always fun to look at the dark parts of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
the things that we've made negative choices around that has had negative impact. Because that's always possible. We can draw out the bad parts of ourselves, the parts that we don't want. And so a big part of the work is accepting that is a part of ourselves, and how do I create an environment around me so that I can activate more of the kind of me that I want to see more of.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I find that, again, in my profession of doing what I do for a living, I find that women tend to default to wanting to know. It's almost like a self beating up, where they want to explore the dark side about themselves. And I'm like, guys, that's easy for you. Let's explore the good sides about you. Whereas I find with the men, it's the reverse. They don't want to admit that they've got that dark side because they just want to explore the good side. And it's like, well, it's almost like we need to swap, because until you can expose and bring it out, I call it detoxing. So it's like they're surfacing it so that it can leave, so that you can create space to be curious and have an even larger, cleaner space in order to find out about the truth of who you are.
Yeah, to me, it reminds me of privilege work. Like there's a lot of support and programs, and rightly so, to empower women. And there's male privilege work that needs to be done in a much greater scale than we are at the moment, because it's very much the system that everyone is a part of, and more often than not complicit to, that makes it even required for women to have to do this work.
I thank you for saying that, about the privilege, and men really stepping up to do this work alongside with us women, are my words. Thank you for I appreciate. Thank you for saying that to us women. Right. Any last nugget for us on men and emotions just before we end this evening?
There's the last nugget I'll leave you with is there's a meeting in the middle. There's the people that are very articulate, very self-aware, and they can read other people very well. There's yes, create all the psychologically safe space for that person, for the men to show up more vulnerably. And the challenge for the men is to show up more courageously, even if it doesn't feel safe, and your partner is doing all they can to make it safe for you to express yourself. The responsibility on men in general is to show up courageously, to express what things you're scared of, not just what you need, because often what we ask for is what we think we need, but underneath there's another layer of there's a fear that I have, especially when men are expected to be all these different things in order to be considered even a man.
You're a very wise man. You're a very in tune man. I appreciate this conversation. To everybody listening, Alvin has made history by being the first man to talk on the Tanya Talks show about men and emotions connects, and a lot of valuable nuggets. I think all of it is so relevant and valuable for any man listening out there, that can have a starting point, just baby steps to moving in that direction. Especially being in a male dominated field and as an engineer, you're certainly paving the way to bringing this emotional intelligence and helping break down the walls to a male dominated industry to help leaders really cultivate a different environment. So we appreciate that. And we thank you for being on the Tanya Talk show this evening and joining us as a guest to discuss.
Thank you so much for having me, Tanya, and for creating this space to have these kinds of conversations. We need more of it in the world.
Yes, thank you. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Alvin, for joining us this evening. And
thanks, everyone.
Join me again tomorrow, that we will have Paige McKenzie on. Just before I go, I do want to mention for you to all follow Alvin, because I want you to get his book when he finishes writing it. I want everybody, like after listening this evening, you obviously know his book is going to be phenomenal, because he has the vocabulary and he has the experience, and he has the words and the data. So you can visit him on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. At Alvin Pilobello, Pilobello. Did I get that right?
Ah, that was perfect.
Okay. So you can reach out to him. You can DM him to find out when he's going to release it. Follow him on all his handles, and let's just keep it moving and keep it going. All right, everybody. Thanks again. Have a good evening. Good night.